The morning sun had barely risen when the shrill ring of the phone shattered the calm of Christmas morning. I groggily reached for the handset, expecting a cheery holiday greeting. Instead, I was greeted by the irate voice of Evelyn, my mother-in-law. "Laura, it's an emergency." Evelyn's voice was laced with manufactured panic. "What's wrong?" I asked, my heart racing with concern. "It's my water bill. I pay monthly, but my niece pays quarterly. It's unfair. I need Tom to call the utility company right now." I blinked in disbelief. This was her emergency? I felt a surge of irritation. "Evelyn, it's Christmas. The company won't be open today, and it's hardly an emergency." She cut me off. "You don't understand. I'm alone here, and no one cares." Her voice rose, teetering on the edge of hysteria. As I tried to reason with her, I heard Tom's footsteps approaching. "What's going on?" he asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "It's your mom," I said, passing him the phone. "Water bill crisis." Tom's face tightened as he listened to his mother. I could hear her shrill voice through the phone, her words dripping with guilt and urgency. After he hung up, I couldn't hold back my frustration. "Why do you let her manipulate you like this, Tom? It's Christmas, and she's talking about water bills." Tom's expression hardened. "She's just lonely, Laura. We need to be there for her." "But there's a limit, Tom. She's taking advantage of your kindness." Our argument escalated, voices rising in anger and frustration. In the midst of our heated exchange, I noticed an email notification on Tom's phone from his sister, Anne. Curiosity piqued. I opened it and felt my blood run cold. The email was a chain of messages where Evelyn had been spreading vile rumors about me to the family, painting herself as the victim of my supposed neglect. I confronted Tom, my voice shaking with rage. "Look at this. She's been lying about me to your family. This is the lonely woman you're defending." Tom read the messages, his face paling. I had no idea," he stammered. The realization hit me like a wave. Evelyn was not just a nagging mother-in-law, she was a manipulator who had been actively working to turn my own husband's family against me. On this Christmas morning, amidst the twinkling lights and unopened gifts, a cold, hard resolve settled in my heart. Evelyn had crossed a line, and it was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. In the cold aftermath of the Christmas confrontation, memories of Evelyn's past intrusions began to surface like unwelcome ghosts. I sat in the living room, the twinkling Christmas lights mocking me with their cheer, as I recalled countless instances where Evelyn had overstepped her bounds. Each memory stoked the fires of my resolve. Later that day, as Tom and I sat in strained silence, I decided to open up about the simmering resentments. "Tom, do you remember our anniversary last year?" I began, my voice steady but laced with bitterness. "How your mother showed up uninvited and made that scene about how I'm not right for you." Tom shifted uncomfortably. "I know, Laura, but she's just... Or what about the time she accidentally sent those emails to your colleagues about me being an opportunist?" I cut him off. "It's always just Evelyn being Evelyn, but it's destructive, Tom. She's tearing us apart." Tom looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "I didn't realize how much this affected you," he admitted. The next day, I decided to dig deeper into Evelyn's behavior. I called Anne, Tom's sister, and what she revealed was shocking. "Laura, you're not the first," Anne confessed. "Mom drove away Tom's ex with similar tactics. I thought she'd changed, but I see the pattern now." My heart sank. This was a deep-seated pattern of behavior, not just simple meddling. "Why didn't anyone warn me?" I asked, a mix of anger and sadness in my voice. "We thought she'd mellowed out," Anne replied. "I'm so sorry, Laura." That night, I lay in bed, Tom's steady breathing beside me, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my mind. The revelation of Evelyn's past actions wasn't just hurtful, it was a betrayal of trust. I realized then that exposing Evelyn's manipulative nature was not just for my vindication, but for the sake of the entire family. It was time for Evelyn's web of lies to unravel. I began collecting evidence of her manipulations, emails, messages, and even recorded conversations. Each piece of evidence was a confirmation of her deceit. I was building my case, not for revenge, but for justice. Evelyn's reign of emotional terror had to end, and I was going to be the one to end it. As I worked, a sense of empowerment grew within me. For too long, I had let Evelyn's actions slide, but no more. The day of reckoning was approaching, and I would be ready. As the days rolled on, my mission to expose Evelyn's duplicity became my driving force. The strain between Tom and me grew, a silent undercurrent beneath our daily routines. He knew I was planning something, but the full extent of my intentions remained hidden, like a shadow in the corner of our life. One evening, as I was organizing the evidence I had gathered, Tom approached me, his expression a mix of concern and caution. "Laura, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice tinged with unease. "I'm doing what needs to be done," I replied without looking up, my eyes fixed on the screen displaying years of Evelyn's manipulations. "This is going too far. It's becoming an obsession," Tom said, his voice rising in frustration. "Can't we just talk to her, try to work this out?" I turned to face him, my resolve stealing my voice. "Talk to her? After everything she's done? No, Tom. She needs to be held accountable." Tom sighed, the weight of our predicament pressing down on him. "I just don't want this to tear us apart." But the wedge Evelyn had driven between us was already too deep, and I knew there was no turning back. The opportunity I was waiting for presented itself a week later. Evelyn called, feigning sweetness, inviting us over for a family dinner. "It's time to clear the air," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. I accepted her invitation, knowing this was the moment to reveal the truth. The dinner was set in Evelyn's meticulously decorated dining room, the table adorned with fine china and crystal glasses. Family members chattered nervously, sensing the underlying tension. After the main course, as everyone settled, I stood up, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice steady. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. I locked eyes with Evelyn, who looked back at me with a smirk, confident in her untouchable matriarchal status. But as I began to unveil the evidence of her deceit, her smirk faltered. I recounted every manipulation, every lie, every instance of her cruelty. The family listened in stunned silence, their expressions shifting from disbelief to shock. Evelyn tried to interrupt, to spin her web of lies, but the truth was irrefutable. The mask she had so carefully crafted over the years was finally slipping, revealing the monster beneath. As I spoke, I felt a catharsis, a release of years of pent-up frustration and hurt. This was not just for me, but for every person she had wronged. When I finished, the room was heavy with a deafening silence. Evelyn sat there, exposed and defeated, her usual commanding presence reduced to a mere shadow. The aftermath of the dinner revelation was like the quiet after a storm. Evelyn's once unassailable position in the family was now deeply shaken. The family, once under her spell, began to see her in a new, unflattering light. In the days that followed, I received calls from various family members, each expressing their shock and gratitude. "I had no idea," said Tom's cousin, her voice heavy with disbelief. "She always seemed so sweet to me." Tom, however, was conflicted. He was torn between his loyalty to his mother and his newfound understanding of her true nature. "I just can't believe she would go this far," he said one night, his voice laden with sorrow. "It's hard to see the truth when it's hidden behind a mask," I replied softly, my hand finding his. "But now we know, and we can't unsee it." As the family grappled with the new reality, I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. The victory was bittersweet. Evelyn had been exposed, but at the cost of fracturing the family she had so tightly controlled. Then came a surprising turn. Anne called to tell me that Evelyn wanted to meet me, alone. "She says she wants to apologize," Anne said, skepticism in her tone. I hesitated, but my curiosity got the better of me. I needed to see Evelyn, to understand why she had done what she had. We met at a neutral cafe, a public place where the dynamics of power were different from the familial walls that had once bolstered her authority. Evelyn was already there, sitting rigidly, her usual air of command replaced with something that resembled humility. "Laura, she began, her voice trailing off, uncharacteristically uncertain. "Why did you do it, Evelyn?" I asked, cutting to the heart of the matter. "Why all the lies, the manipulation?" She sighed, a deep, weary sound. "I was afraid," she confessed. "Afraid of losing Tom, afraid of being alone. You were taking him away, and I just couldn't handle that." Her words were like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. The fear, the insecurity, it didn't excuse her actions, but it painted a more complex picture of the woman who had become my nemesis. "I understand fear," I said slowly. "But what you did, Evelyn, it wasn't just fear, it was destructive." "I know," she whispered, her eyes downcast. "And I'm sorry, truly sorry." I looked at her, this woman who had caused so much pain, and realized that holding on to anger would only continue the cycle. I accept your apology, Evelyn, but things can't go back to how they were. As I left the cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still ours to shape. And as for Evelyn, her journey to redemption was just beginning, a path she would have to walk alone. In the weeks that followed, the dynamic within Tom's family shifted. The once unquestioned authority Evelyn held was now a subject of scrutiny. Family gatherings, once dominated by her presence, had a new, tentative atmosphere, as if everyone was relearning how to interact without her overbearing influence. Tom and I, meanwhile, found a renewed sense of unity. The ordeal had tested us, but in its wake we discovered a deeper understanding and respect for each other. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner," Tom said to me one evening, his eyes filled with regret. "You were right about my mother." "It's not about being right," I replied, taking his hand. "It's about us and our future. We're in this together, remember?" Evelyn, for her part, had become more withdrawn. The revelation of her actions and the subsequent apology had taken a toll on her, stripping away the facade she had maintained for years. She was no longer the matriarch reigning over her family. She was just a woman, flawed and humbled. But the true test came during the next family event, a birthday party for Tom's nephew. It was the first large gathering since the dinner confrontation. As we arrived, I could feel the eyes of the family on us, a mix of curiosity and apprehension in their gazes. Evelyn was there, noticeably quieter, her usual flamboyance subdued. Throughout the party, I watched her interact with family members, noticing the careful, almost timid way she engaged with them. It was a stark contrast to the domineering woman I had known. Then, unexpectedly, she approached me. "Laura, may I have a word?" she asked, her voice lacking its former certainty. We stepped aside, away from the buzz of the party. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, her eyes meeting mine, "for showing me the mirror. I've lost a lot, but I needed to see the truth." Her words took me by surprise. The Evelyn standing before me was a shadow of the woman who had caused so much turmoil. In her place was someone vulnerable, someone seeking redemption. "I hope you find peace, Evelyn," I said, my voice soft but firm. "But remember, trust is earned, not given." As the party continued, I reflected on the journey we had all undertaken. The path to healing was long and uncertain, but there was hope. Evelyn's fall from grace had been her own doing, but in her downfall, there was a chance for change, for her and for all of us. As Tom and I left the party, hand in hand, I realized that while the echoes of the past would always remain, our future was ours to write. And in that future, there was room for growth, understanding, and maybe, just maybe, forgiveness.